Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live here from London. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get going. There's lots of people who are already lots of questions coming in, so I'll do some of the preamble stuff as quickly as I possibly can. Just a reminder, of course, if you're asking a question, please write the word question. If you're watching this afterwards and you're not live, bear in mind that this is entirely driven by live questions, and I will put a little chapter mark in so you can jump through to kind of when the questions start. So this is my last live stream, not forever, just until I head off of this trip here. So I fly off to Santiago, Chile on Saturday, this coming Saturday, and then I'll be boarding, as you can see here, Silver Endeavour on the 29th of October. So my plan is, and that's the itinerary there, my plan is, of course, when I'm on Silver Endeavour, hopefully to do a live stream because they have Starlink on the ship, and I believe from people who've been down there last season, it's pretty good. So we'll hopefully do some live streams, but I will do a live stream hopefully next Sunday when I'm in Santiago. So that's your Silver Endeavour there. Now my aim, because I only arrive on the Sunday morning, my aim is to do it at 4 p.m. San Diego time, which looking at things, well, the clocks are changing in the UK, so I might have got this wrong. So it's either going to be 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. in the UK, and it should probably be 3 p.m. Eastern time and noon Pacific time. But certainly do keep an eye, because once I'm there and in the hotel and stuff, I'll quickly double check the times and everything's right, and I'll sort of adjust the times to make sure it's right. So this should be either sort of around noon Pacific time, about 3 p.m. maybe also Eastern time, 4 p.m. Santiago time, and about 8 or maybe 7 o'clock UK time. So I'll definitely try and do that. One thing I want to quickly show you before we start is a really fantastic new tool. Now, there's only 2 people who currently have access to the tool. So it's Emma Cruises and myself. So the reason I want to show it to you is I just want to show you what it is quickly, but also all our followers can sign up to get access to this tool before they start promoting more publicly, which they'll do sometime in November with an aim to launching towards the end of the year. Now, the thing is called the Cruise Globe. So this is it here. So what you do is you put your, like I've done here, I put about 20 of my cruises in, and then they all show up on the map. But what's really cool about it is you can, of course, all your cruises from 2015, and it uses satellite tracking. Then you can zoom in into ports. So I've done some things where I've zoomed in and looked which glacier I've gone right up to in Alaska, in Juneau where we docked, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool, and it's a really good tool. And as I mentioned, only Emma and myself are playing around with it at the moment. It's actually done by the guys who do these cruise maps here. So, but it's going to be completely free when it launches. So if you do want to sign up, I've got links on my socials. It's called thecruiseglobe.com. You sign up. You can actually start inputting your cruises already on there if you want to. And then when it launches, you'll be amongst the first to do that. It's really good fun. I've got a little bit addicted because I massively want to put all my cruises in. So anyway, that's thecruiseglobe.com. So enough of that. So I think that I have done all the various bits and pieces that I want to do. So let's get stuck into the questions. As I said, I will definitely try and get through as quickly as I can, get as many done within 60 minutes. Now, Susan has left a couple of questions around the Mekong River cruises. So Viking have posted their 2027 Mekong River cruises, starting in Hanoi and ending in Saigon. So in Ho Chi Minh City, with a combination of flight, coach, and cruise. It looks like only 4 days on the river is as usual. It's got a follow-up question asking if I ever look at the Mekong River cruise. So basically, Susan, I'll take this off because it's covering me up. So I did the Mekong in 2020, in just a couple of months before shutdown, and I went and double checked, and I did a 10-night cruise. However, what I would say is we went all the way from, we started in Ho Chi Minh City, in the Saigon district is actually right where the cruises can go. And we went all the way up through Vietnam and into Cambodia. And we went in at Siem Reap, so we could actually go in Angkor Wat. Now, I haven't looked at that itinerary, didn't get a chance to look at it. So it may be that they're literally only covering Vietnam part of the Mekong, but our cruise was 10 nights. However, if you go in the dry season and not the rainy season in that itinerary, like I did, I went in the more dry season, we actually had to get off the ship at some point because we couldn't pass through the lake, which it's gone on my mind. It's a Tampai Lake. There's a lake which is quite shallow and in the rainy season, the boats can cross it. In the dry season, they can't. So we actually got on a coach, and we were coached about 2 or so hours away, and we ended up staying in a hotel in Siem Reap, so we could then go to Angkor Wat. So Susan, what I would strongly encourage you, Angkor Wat is just incredible. Parts of Cambodia are incredible. So without looking at that itinerary, what I would say is I did a 10-night cruise. I did it on Crossy Europe, much smaller ships than Viking, not as luxurious as Viking, but it was amazing. There was only 3 English speakers, the rest were French, so we actually had one guide allocated to 3 of us, which is even more incredible. But I would make sure that you look at longer itineraries because there are so much to see. I would secondly make sure that you're doing Vietnam and Cambodia, and that there is included or an extension that goes to Angkor Wat, because that is really remarkable. So Susan did ask the question, and by the way, lots of lines do it. So one I would encourage you to take a look at is Amber Waterways do it. Obviously, across Europe, it's not for everybody because it's very French, obviously, and so most passengers will be French, and it's not as luxurious as the others. And there's also Pandao, which have these beautiful classic ships, which have rave reviews. And when I go back next time, I'd probably look at either I might look at Amber, or I'd like to do the Pandao, Pandaw, and they are just really beautiful, interesting kind of ships. Susan asked me a question whether I would do a future group cruise. Now I've got a lot of questions around group cruises, so I will come back to those in a second, because last night I also had my regular Zoom chat with my captain level channel members and patrons, and we spoke a little bit about group cruises there. So I think if I did a river cruise, Susan, I would probably be looking at a European river cruise, because I think the Mekong may be a little bit too limiting, but never say never. But I think river cruising in that discussion came up a lot. And the other thing that came up quite a lot is kind of small ship experiences. So I'll come back to that when I get another question, because there's another question I know about group cruises coming up shortly. See the world, good to see you here again. What's the one thing you did on cruises when you first started that now you would avoid at all costs, or now do? For me, I now calculate luxury cruise inclusions versus mass market versus add-ons. Thank you. So see the world, probably for me, it's the thing that came into my head when I saw questions was excursions. When I first went on cruises, I was very cautious, and I only went on cruise line excursions. As I built up more confidence, less fretting about getting back in time. I also understand that excursions are quite expensive, that they're more limiting depending on the line you went on. I do much more self-exploring or kind of independent touring. That's probably for me one of the key changes that I've done, and that does have quite big budget impacts. I mean, you are quite right. I mean, I think your point here about making sure that you're doing the kind of the door-to-door cost, like how much it's going to cost you if you go on a premium or a mass resort line versus some of the smaller lines, because the difference is not always as great as you think. So that is, I think, valid. I probably am slightly unusual when it comes to cruising, because I'm obviously always looking at things with an eye to the channel as well as for myself. But I do want to take a second thing, which is when I first started cruising, I was very, very cruise line loyal, and I wasn't at all promiscuous, as it were, with cruise lines. So I started initially on Pinot. I didn't really like Pinot very much. I then shifted to Cunard, and for years, but Mark and I would only go on Cunard. And with the channel, I started trying other lines, and I realized there was so much more around there. So I now get much more focused on itineraries with a portfolio of cruise lines, and I'm much less obsessed about building loyalty on a cruise line. I know, I know there are pros and cons of building loyalty. I'm not going to answer your question, bring your question on, because that'll open a whole world of things I don't want to get into. Dawn, I'm considering a cruise from Bali to Cairns, that's Cairns in Australia, traveling, I guess, to Komodo Island, Papua New Guinea, Eastern Australia, Indonesia, Malacca Islands. Are you aware of this itinerary? So Dawn, I'm a little bit aware of the itinerary. I've looked at the various itineraries. I'm actually doing in February next year. I'm actually doing it on Crystal. It's sort of slightly repositioning, which is from Tokyo down to Bali. And I did look then at the extension part. I do find that very interesting. because they are slightly more unusual lines. And there's a lot of the smaller lines, particularly, will have quite nice itineraries. So obviously, on the premium ultra luxury side, you've got the Crystals, but Oceania, and I think Azamara do a couple of those interesting ones. But I haven't done it. But if anyone has done it, then that would be great to give Dawn some tips. But it looks like a great itinerary. And it's interesting. It's ending. I guess it's not. It's ending in Cairns, which is an interesting changeover port. The other thing, Dawn, I would look at is whether any of the expedition ships, particularly when they're repositioning, like the Seabourn, etc., if they're doing those, Connaught might also do those, because I think you might get some real deep dive stuff. Horvier, I hope you have pronounced that correctly. Cruise prices seem very high right now. Do you think there'll be a price correction, or prices remain this high for foreseeable future? The short answer is they absolutely will remain high. Cruise lines are selling incredibly full. If you look at all the report, the results have come out from the Royal Caribbean Group, Norwegian Group, Viking recently, because they have to keep doing quarterly updates. All of them are talking about how a lot of them have already sold a huge slug of their 25 itineraries. They are selling over 100% capacity. As you know, ships are double capacity is based on double occupancy. So once you get families and friends, you can go over. Demand will keep prices high. Now, what is interesting though is, and it's what I do, is I keep an eye on. I'm seeing cruise lines increasingly do things like flash sales or second person traveling free. So I sign up to all of the cruise lines that I'm interested in mailings, and I jump on promotions. I should do a whole video actually around how to get deals and promotions in high prices. I've had it on my listed and I've kind of scoped it out. So for example, I booked 2 cruises recently in the last 2 weeks or so, one of which is a big around South America, which is on Honor America, 31 night from Buenos Aires all the way through to ends up back in Fort Lauderdale, because so it goes right the way down, Shy and all that. And they were doing a promotion which had lots of stuff bundled in, like they had all included, bundled and stuff. And then I just booked one on Celebrity, even though I'm going solo on that, because they were doing second person's travels free promotion. And so I effectively got a solo rate on that, which is a repositioning when it goes from New York through Canada to Greenland, and a little couple of ports in Iceland. So that's how I get around the high prices thing. Or the other thing I've done, for example, is I've booked a repositioning on Silversea, which I really want to do, try their new ships, crazy expensive normally. And so I've done, again, a repositioning from Tokyo, from Seward in Alaska, which ends up eventually in Tokyo. It's an 18-night with some ports and sea days. Again, that's half the normal price if I was doing kind of a regular cruise. So it's a little bit of playing around with that. Good to see other people here. You got Heike. Hetty's here, which is great. So Hetty is always traveling these days. I think Hetty's just back from a great trip, which I've been following on, which is great. I think Hetty, I can't remember, for another trip before the end of this year. I'm sure you probably have. Christina's also here, who was on the group cruise. She's been on both group cruises. She'll be one of our triple, I need to find the right word. So people who came on on the first group cruise and the second group cruise, we called the people, there were 6 people on that. We called them, I think it was double offenders, as it were. So there's 6 people there, and they got little badges. Then on the Panama, we've got a couple of people who will be triple offenders. I need to find a better name for that. Christine will be one of those, and there'll be a lot of 2-time offenders coming from the first group cruise. Anyway, Sang Ho Lee, good to see you here. Planning an Alaskan cruise for next summer. I heard Glacier Bay is a must. Absolutely, it is essential. So thinking of Princess/Hal, but open to suggestions for a couple in the late 20s. Which line or itinerary do you recommend? So San Haley, this is actually great timing. I've actually just, I'm working on a video at the moment, which was much requested, which is around cruise lines that I recommend by the 8 main cruising regions in the world, of which Alaska is one of those. So, but that video won't be out because I've written the script and it's recorded and it has to be edited and all that sort of stuff. That won't be out. I think it's scheduled for the weekend of the 9th of November, if I remember correctly. But basically, you're right. I would absolutely focus on cruise lines that go into Alaska, going to Glacier Bay. Only 6 lines are allowed in there because they only allow 2 cruise lines. So those 6 are Princess, Holland America, Norwegian, Viking, Seabourn, and Cunard. they're allowed in. So you need to focus on those. So for late 20s, you might want to take a look at some of the Norwegian itineraries, because you may find those, just a little bit more vibey, a little bit more entertainment-wise, a little bit more party-esque. Saying that, though, Princess Holland America, because of things in Alaska, you tend to find the passenger mix is not atypical. So you'll see a lot of families, multi-generational couples, groups, particularly on Princess and Holland America. Once you get into the sort of after about sort of June into July, August, and so on. So depending on when you're going, but those are the ones I would absolutely focus on. Dawn saying she likes the cruise boat. It's really good fun. So it's just to remind everybody, I'll bring it up. It's probably going to be over there. If you are interested in that, let me just bring that up again. You see the scan, sorry. Anyway, it's the Cruise Globe. If you are interested in that, remember, it's really good fun. It's not going to be launching for a while, but you can sign up and you can start getting your cruises in there. So when it goes live, it'll be in there. And it's someone that had asked me on my socials when I posted it. It is satellite tracking dates and not, just a rough thing that you'd get. Let's have a look. So I went and scrolled too fast, and now I've lost the questions. Here we go. Lots of people, as usual, all around the world. Jeff's here as well from Ohio, another group cruiser. Diane and Andrew are here, which is great. Tom always has a question, so let's have a look and make sure that I haven't looked at the question in advance. Tom, across on Facebook, just a reminder, I do stream this on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And it's always good when people post questions from Facebook or LinkedIn, because I know that it's working. Because I track it here on my iPad to make sure that it's working there, but I only check it on Facebook, on YouTube. Anyway, arrived home from our region Japan cruise on Friday, getting over jet lag. Just watch your cruises pick the best and worst lines right now. Video. Are you making the spreadsheet available? We concur with the region slippage and ratings. Okay, good point. A lot of people ask me that. So Tom, I should put that in. I will put that. So those people who haven't watched the video, why haven't you watched the video? So basically what I did, to let you know, is I spent some time, I keep getting asked the question around, have cruise lines got worse? So what I did is I spent some time looking over the last 9 months, pulled out all the ratings on things like Cruise Critic, but I didn't only use Cruise Critic. I probably didn't make that clear enough in the video. And I looked at other sites like various consumer sites. I looked at the reviews and stuff and all that sort of stuff. And I put on their ratings, and then I picked up each of the key categories. So mass resort, premium, small ship luxury, ultra luxury, and then regional lines. What was actually getting the highest score, what was getting the lowest score. And of the 25, so I looked at the 25 main English-speaking lines, all but 2 actually had seen some slippage in their ratings, which was interesting. So a lot of people ask me around. So I'm going to make a note. I will put a link. Let me make a link to the spreadsheet into best and worst now. So I will in that video. I'll put a link to my spreadsheet with all the calculations in there. Great. Other people have signed up. John. Leaving today for a Greek cruise with Windstar. Have you done this cruise? Any tips? So, John, I haven't done it on Windstar. I've done it on Azamara, and I've done it on Seabourn, and I've done it on one other line, not an intensive Greek cruise, but some of the ports around there. So, the good thing about the Windstar, I suspect, is you will go, as we did on Seabourn and Azamara, you get to go into some of the kind of the smaller ports. One of the tips that I would have is, so you're going now, so it's not going to be crazy busy at this time of year. So like Santorini will be less crazy busy. But my one tip would be for Santorini is one of the options, if you get, because you have to tender to Santorini, if you get to the dockside, which everyone has to get to, and it's really busy and you don't want to walk up the steep kind of incline to get up to the city up there, city, don't take the donkeys. I think it's very cool what they do with the donkeys. If you don't want to walk up and the queue for the cable car is very long, one of the things you can do, which is really cool, is there's basically a shuttle thing. You can buy a ticket, which is a boat, which will then go to, is it Ola town, And then you can explore out of town for a bit, and then there's a bus, so you explore there a bit, so you see that, which is also one of the places where a lot of people go to watch the sun go down. You won't have time to do that on your cruises, but then they have a bus that takes you to the top of the classic thing that people go to. So it's a little bit less busy, and then you can either walk down or come down on the cable car. But that's probably my main tip. But it's really, self-exploring is very easy in the Greek islands. That's probably my main tip. I do have a video about it, so I will put in this, so maybe 10 minutes after it's done, if you come back to the video, I'll put a link to my Greek islands. I'm sure there's many more tips that I should have thought of. Orderlamere. What is the best cruise itinerary for Japan, please, and the best time of the year to visit? Okay, so I'll talk about the best time first of all, because I have a slightly different perspective. Most people would strongly encourage you to go to Japan at cherry blossom time, because it's obviously a magical time of the year. Now, it's becoming a little bit less easy to predict what the guides told me in Japan, but it's sort of into March, April time. And they're sort of with climate change stuff, they argue that it's becoming more, used to be a certain time and it's shifting a bit. But that's sort of March, April time. Now, I have been to Japan before. I actually found it quite cold at that time of year. I went in October, which is the end of summer. It's a little bit less busy. You obviously not get the cherry blossoms. I mean, everywhere in Japan is crazy busy, but the weather was great. It's not terribly boiling hot, but it's still nice and warm. And I really liked going in October. So that's sort of the beginning, really, of the season, the sort of Japan season. Now, in terms of the best itinerary, I would try and focus on one that does sort of a circumnavigation if you possibly can. So I did similar to the earlier questions. I did the Regent one where we did more the lower end, but we went to all iconic places. So we got to go ultimately from Kobe to Osaka. We went to Hiroshima, went to Nagasaki, and so on and so on. But there are some which go all the way around. So Princess and Holland America and Celebrity do those, and of course they're a little bit more affordable, obviously, than Regent. So one of the things I'm actually doing, because I didn't do the full circuit, and I mentioned it earlier, is the cruise I'm doing on Silversea, which goes from Seward to Tokyo, actually will cover some of the other ports on the other side of the island that I didn't see. So I'll try and do one that does as much of a circumnavigation as you possibly can. And take a look certainly at the Celebrity, Holland America, and Princess itineraries, even if those cruise lines don't appeal to you, but that gives you a good sense of kind of what is available. Paul, how good to see you. Paul always has some challenging questions. Some lines are advertising solar eclipse itineraries for summer 2026. Will this be a big event, and which routes will be the best to pick for this event? So, Paul, I have done a little bit of research into solar eclipse. I'm actually planning to book a solar eclipse, although I keep feeling I probably should. First thing I would say is, if you do want to do a solar eclipse, anybody, please, I'd strongly encourage you to book as soon as you possibly can. They're filling up very fast, and the prices are ramping up really fast as ships are filling up. So I think it will be a big event. The cruise lines, when they saw the solar event in April of April of this year, when there was one solar eclipse that happened, I think the cruise lines were surprised at just how popular they were. And there's lots of itineraries, I guess, out of San Diego and stuff. So they're all over the place. Now, so I did look at the maps, and I'm trying to remember this exactly. But there's lots of, my understanding is you need to be going a little bit further kind of north, if you possibly can, to do that. So I would definitely look at the further north you can go. But Paul, I'm not an expert on the solar eclipse stuff, so I would take a look at it. But I know there's some that are more kind of Europe. So my understanding is, first of all, you need to be in Europe. And most of them are kind of around Europe. But then there's some which are going kind of more north of Norway, Svalbard way. And a lot of people I know have booked those cruises. So Harvey is saying some very nice things. I've never been on a cruise, find your channel very informative, which is very kind of each. So KY was asking around so KY, the important thing to note, just coming back to that, is I have only looked at the most recent reviews. So I literally went through and got all the most recent reviews. So I will do that. Seinwald Mad Chen, a train question. Would you recommend the Blue Train in South Africa? I heard a lot of bad news from this country and in general tips regarding health and safety. Seinwald Marchen, the blue train sort of went out of service for a while. It is back in. I would actually recommend, rather than the blue train, I would recommend Rovos Rail. Now, I've done Rovos Rail from Cape Town to Pretoria. And it's incredible. So they're old Pullman coaches, which have been restored and sort of built on, and they are amazing. Some of the sections will sometimes use a steam engine now, but more towards the Pretoria end, so not the whole route. Now, the train lines within South Africa are deteriorating, so it's a little bit erratic. No matter which of them you go on, even when we went a long time ago, even then the lines were a bit erratic. Someone who follows me on the channel went on Rovos Rail quite recently. In fact, she did that just before I was on a Silversea cruise that she was also on, and it was a bit mixed, like they didn't get everything that they should have done and didn't do all the train experiences. So I would definitely look at Rovos Rail. I mean, South Africa is going through lots of change. It's got a struggling economy. They have lots of they call them load shedding, so power outages here and there. Because there's, I guess, the infrastructure side. But parts of South Africa are a little bit more risky. So when we did my South African cruise, so I know South Africa relatively well, but I hadn't been there for a long time. But certainly in some of the ports, we were advised that don't go out exploring, like in Durban, for example, just don't walk off the ship and go self-exploring. If you're in Cape Town and more the downtown Cape Town, it's okay. So you do need to be a little bit cautious there, but it's very beautiful country. Jason, hi from Olympia. Is that what Lamba? I should probably know my geography better. Anyway, let's get on with the question, shall we, Jason? Tariffs, fees, delays, and congestion is a hallmark of London Heathrow. Is there a way to get to Southampton and avoid London Heathrow on international travel? Well, the easiest way, Jason, is, of course, if you're coming across from the US, is to go on Queen Mary 2 on their scheduled crossings. Of course, you'll also find other ships will do repositionings, although they tend to come into more Barcelona or Rome or whatever. You can also, if you are doing one of those, you can, of course, go by train. There's a Eurostar, which goes from Brussels or Paris, so the train through the Channel Tunnel into London. So there are ways around it, but it pretty means, doing a transatlantic or, getting into Europe on one of those repositionings, getting the train or whatever up to Barcelona, and then doing the Barcelona, coming to Barcelona, wherever, getting the train to either Brussels or to Paris, and doing the Eurostar would be my main tip. But you're right, Heathrow is quite a frustrating airport. I find it more from the luggage perspective. They are pretty slow. Andrew, who's one of our people who was on the first group cruise, is here. KB in the UK, it's interesting. I've been asked quite a lot about this question recently, and I do have it on my list to do as a topic. I'm always nervous about it because I feel like I don't know enough about insurance, but I can partner with people who do. Anyway, KB in the UK, have you ever made a travel insurance claim? Was it easy and straightforward to do? Did they ask lots of detailed questions? And did you get the amount of money you were expecting? So KB, I have actually only ever once done a travel insurance claim. And that was actually not for me. It was actually for my dad. So just before he passed away, he had a cruise booked on Saga. And then he fell ill, or he wasn't feeling very well, and he just wasn't doing great, and he was starting to have more tests and things, so he didn't really want to go on the cruise. And we tried to make the claim, and the thing was fairly straightforward. We didn't actually get paid anything because they argued it was linked to a known condition, and the policy wasn't a known condition policy. So my learning, of course, is take those known policies. So I haven't had a lot of experience with that. So if anybody else has, I know we had some questions last week from Rhonda around this. I think a lot of it hinges on the cruise line, the travel insurance itself. But I certainly found they were quite quick, and they were very clear what it was, and they were really clear about saying no. So I'm just smashing a chair. I've got that, push that away. King Goes Cruising, I do not have any recommendations for Casablanca. I have been to Casablanca once on a land-based trip. I'm going to Casablanca next year in April on my Explore 2 journey. I was looking, they haven't listed the excursions I can book yet. On their main site, I can see the excursions they normally offer there. So I don't have any, unfortunately. So if you go before me and you have them, then please, please, please. Oh, Dawn saying it is with Ponant. So fantastic. Ponant are great. Mark is here, which is great. I hope Mark doesn't mind me saying this. So he's one of our twice group cruisers, and I will be seeing him next week on the Silver Sea cruise. So I hope you don't mind me saying that. I should probably check before I said that. So let's have a look. Bill's fan 72. Planning a Japan cruise, what time of the year would you recommend? Okay, so I think I've answered that. There's a lot of lines, by the way, that do it, as I mentioned, and so a lot of them do. The reason I talk about things like I talk about Regent, which I did, Holland America, Princess Celebrity. They base ships there, so they just pass through. I have done it from Queen Mary to Queen Elizabeth. I have done on Cunard, Queen Elizabeth, but they don't base their ships there. Whereas I feel those lines kind of base their ships there. Viking also has a fairly period of time as well. So that's why I tend to focus on the lines that are there a lot, because the crew knows them, the people in the port know them, the tour guides from the tour companies get to know them. I feel like they're the ones to really sort of focus on. Brandy Harbour. We're thinking about a Norwegian fjord cruise in 2026. Very nice. We're in our 70s and prefer the luxury lines. When's the best time of year to go? Any other suggestions, recommendations? So I'm actually going to put, let's make a note here. I will put, Randy, I will put in the notes of this live some links to some videos around the Norwegian fjords, where I'll probably answer that many of these questions much better there. But there's a few things that I want to do. So about maybe 5-10 minutes or whenever, come back to that. If you ever want to come back, by the way, to my lives, if you go to the channel, to Travis channel, and you'll see little tabs there, videos, shorts, lives, and you'll find the past lives there. I did actually take a lot of them, move them to unlisted, and then lots of people kind of move them to unlisted, saying, please don't do that, because people go back and watch old ones. So I'll stop doing that. Anyway, so I'll put a link to the Norwegian fjord video there. Personally, Randy, answer your question, I actually like going quite early in the season. Or late in the season. So early in the season, if you go around sort of May time, when the season's starting, you tend to, as you sail through the fjords, it's a little bit chilly still, but you do get quite spectacular kind of waterfalls, because all the snow and the ice is kind of melting on the top of these big kind of mountains. And so there's many, the waterfalls all cascading down is really spectacular. So I really like going at that time of the year. It's also not a massively busy time. Also, the other thing I would recommend, though, is if you want to go later in the year, so right at the end of the season, obviously it's going to be much colder. And if you go particularly late, because you also have a really good chance at that time of the year, you'll have lots of cruises which are doing things like they'll call hunt the Northern Lights. Obviously, being getting darker much earlier, there's there's more chance where they come out, I guess. And there's lots of lines that will do those a little bit later in the season. Now, a lot of lines, even the UK-based line, I'm not sure where you're based, but a lot of the UK lines, like Saga, will do those as well. So some of the small ships, Fred Olsen will do some of those small ships, but obviously all the other lines do them as well. Also take a look at Hurtigruten, and they do some guaranteed to see the Northern Lights for your money back. And Havila, Havila, which is their recently launched competitor, is another good one to look at. Just a reminder, write the word question, so I don't miss your questions. A couple here that I nearly missed. So Jacob, I'm going to put the Med Cruise video. So Jacob, West Mediterranean is fantastic itinerary. That's a great itinerary. I'm guessing you're going to like Livorno and stuff like that. So you get to Florence. Any must-do excursions in the usual ports. I will put the video there, which is about the ports and the excursions to see, and then you can check off the ones you're doing. My key thing would be is if you're going from Barcelona to Rome, I hope that you've built in time to see Rome, because you won't see it otherwise, because obviously you at the end to explore Rome, so you really get to see Rome. That would be an absolute must. And Barcelona, you get time to spend Barcelona. But Barcelona and Rome, actually, the hop-on hop-off buses are quite good, because they'll take all the key sites there. If you're going to Livorno or you're going to La Spezia, depending on which cruise line you're on, I would strongly encourage you. It's a very long day, but to get into Florence, and I did do the combined Pisa and Florence excursion. But I will leave that there, because you can then check off which ports that you are going to, and then I dive into the must-see things in all of those ports. So Peter, have you heard of USS, since we said about QE2 or Lessico? It's a little bit in flux at the moment. The plan is, and it might have been, the deal might have been signed. The plan is to take her, is she in Philadelphia at the moment or something, and turn it into sink it and turn it into basically an underwater sort of reserve slash diving slash like whatever thing. So that's the plan. There's no plans to save. I think she's way past saving. There's quite interesting videos recently where some people got on the ship. I mean, it's way past saving in reality. And the plan is to sink her. And I need to double check because I've been following. There's a bit of a saga between the money and signing the deal, but it might have been signed. Good point that Sandra's making is there are some of the small lines like Uncruise, ones that are not the major cruise lines. They get into Glacier Bay as well, but the bigger kind of cruise lines. Let's have a look. Just want to write the word question. So Jean has a question here. Let's have a look. Could you speak about denied boarding due to previous travel? My husband traveled to Kosovo and cannot get off the river cruise in Serbia. I understand some Muslim countries don't allow Israel stamps. Jean, I'm not an expert on this, but I would say, what you're right is to absolutely check. So what I always do, so, for example, even going to the United States, if you have visited Cuba and a few other countries, I guess it was introduced originally back in the previous administration, has been kept by the current administration, is if you've been to Cuba and a few other countries, you cannot come in on a nasty. You have to get a specific visa. So it's always important to check. I do know that there's quite a few countries that don't allow Israeli stamps. So that's why I think when you go into Israel, they give the option of your passport being stamped. So, but I'm not an expert on this. But one of the things I would absolutely say is if you need to do the checks yourself. I've actually worked on a video about some of the nightmares. I address this in a little bit more detail, but the best thing to do always is with those countries that you're going to, and if you're going to river cruise, it's fine because you're going to less countries, is take a look at your local government travel advisory. So I use the Foreign Office, and of course in the US, there's the US State Department Travel Advisory. But I suspect the Foreign Office one is a good place to start. So if you just type into Google FCO, Foxtrot Charlie Oscar, and the name of the country. So if you typed in Serbia, it will tell you what the entry restrictions are, any visas, or if you can't get in with the passport. And that's what I strongly recommend people do. And in fact, in this video I'm making, I'm strongly encouraging you to always check because both Europe and the UK are introducing the equivalent of the ESTA that you have to go in Australia, Canada and stuff. So it changes all the time. And really importantly, even if you phone the cruise line and they've said you don't need a certain visa or you don't need a passport or whatever, they will still refuse entry, even if they've told you don't need something, because at the end of the day, they have to have the right document. If you've watched that denied boarding, I've given some examples in there. Michelle, so are back-to-back stops in the Ravenna? Is there much too close to the port? And as someone said, in the Ravenna, less so. If your back-to-back was in Trieste, which I believe is the right way to pronounce it, I get told off once in a video because I hadn't pronounced Ravenna and I pronounced Trieste right. Ravenna, much more working. Port Trieste, much more attractive. So it's a long way, though. I think it's 2 hours, if I remember correctly. I think they're both roughly about 2 hours. But if it makes sense, you can get into Venice. I would definitely try and see Venice. So Beth is in Juneau. So I just saw actually that there was the referendum around not allowing ships in to Juneau on a Saturday, and that got rejected by the residents. So there is a slight reduction in the number of ships and people in there on a Saturday, but not the big reduction where they're going to try and stop any ship. I think it was over 250 coming in. Audrey, I'm making a note here because I'm going to leave another link to you. So I have lots of tips on solo cruising. I cruise solo a lot. I worked out actually to go to spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. I think I've done now 64 or 65 solo cruises so far. So fantastic that you want to get out there and do it. So Audrey, what I will do is I will put a link to my solo cruising tips video, because there's lots and lots and lots of tips around, particularly the pricing, how to choose a solo cruise, etc., etc. So I'll leave that in the link to this. So again, maybe 5-10 minutes after this, if you come back, or next week or whenever you want to look at it, you should find the link there. But if you want to find the video yourself, if you go to the channel, my Tips for Travelers channel, you'll see a little search button. It's really quite small to find. If you were search solo there, you'll also find that video. And that's probably the best do. So Kathy, yeah. So I didn't. Yeah. So basically, it wasn't 100% solo. It wasn't a no solo supplement. So what I did is they're running a promotion which was 70% off second person, but they applied that effectively effectively it was a low solo supplement. So I obviously booked it through travel agent Sarah, but I played around a little bit online. I always play around online and just look how full lines are and what sort of cabin availability is, and can you get the cabins I want, whatever. And I noticed when I was doing like a running through the booking, they were giving me a price which seemed to be like the price per person. So I thought I'd put something in incorrect. I thought I'd put in 2 people and it was going to double the price. And then I realized when I spoke to Sarah is that they were applying that 70% reduction. So it's watching for little promotions. So coming back to Audrey's question, it's those little tips and tips and tricks. And particularly with celebrity, as people know, I get a lot of people get wound up about celebrity as a solo traveler, is sometimes as a solo, you end up paying even more than 2 people. It sometimes feels like that. Manuel, oh, what a great name. Manuel Alejandro Rosa Meneros. Hopefully I sort of not butchered that too bad. You're going before me. I haven't been on New Crystal. One thing I would say is, and if you watch that video around lines that are doing really well at the moment, is Crystal is doing really well. I'm just doing a double check. I always get confused. I'm on Crystal Symphony. So I've been on Serenity pre Old Crystal, and I'm going on Symphony in February next year. So you will beat me before that. So please let me know what you think of it. People that I know that have really loved Crystal, someone I really trust and know really well, and is quite fussy, absolutely loved Crystal. I think they're on Symphony as well, and for quite a long time, which was great. And Panama, of course, I absolutely love Panama. So let's have a look. I think I saw Jack. I'll come back to Jack's question in a second. Let's have a look. Crystal Symphony. Sorry, I got please do videos on promotion. Okay, Katie's saying, comment, please do videos. Yes, I will do that. I've had it on my list for a while, Katie. And I think the title is called something like How to Find Good Fair Prices in Times of Rising Prices. And I've pulled together, because I obsessively, anything to do with cruises, I obsessively collect. So I have all these folders of every different promotions and one that have worked and haven't worked. So I will do that. I will ramp that up on my list of things to do, because obviously further to that other question, assuming the price is going to stay high, some of the ducking and diving, and I've done a lot of that planning through into 25 into 26. So I will do that. Let's have just remember to write the word questions so I don't miss. Snack Daddy. Oh, I love that. That's a great name, Snack Daddy. We're planning a cruise that stops in London, Tilbury. This will be our first time visiting the UK. Do you recommend we travel to London? Oh, absolutely. Tilbury is basically a industrial area. The port's quite cute itself. It's like an old Art Deco building, but there's nothing around in Tilbury. It's an industrial kind of park land, working kind of industrial area. It's not attractive at all. So unless you want to stay on the ship, for example, I would definitely get into London. Now it's quite far. It's quite a pain getting to London. I suspect the cruise line will offer you transfers in or shuttle in, etc. But absolutely don't stay in Tilbury unless you want to stay on the ship, because there's nothing to do. Oh, great! So some great tips from Thomas Dean's Fine Art on Ravenna, with giving you some alternatives. Thanks very much for that. Some very good alternatives to then going into Venice. So if you don't want to do that 2 hour there, 2 hour back. So thanks very much for adding that. Brilliant. And Rosemary, oh, thanks very much, Rosemary. So Rosemary is, I think Rosemary's also got, Rosemary is one of my ship captain's channel members on the call last night, and we were talking about her cruises. I think I mentioned I was on a cruise with someone, and Rosemary has the most incredible cruise itinerary, very adventurous, lots of mostly expedition stuff. And I seem to remember you've got a solar eclipse one. I can't remember which line it's on. So thanks very much for that. So Iceland, Greenland, so it's right up that way. As I said, there are people selling them which are a little bit more medi. So I guess you want to go way up there. I didn't see me pointing up, but way past where this map goes. So actually, I do have a map. No, the one at the top there is Japan. I was going to say I do have a map there. So let's have a look. Write the word question. Oh, here we are. Mika asked me, why have you never cruised Carnival? I've never cruised Carnival partly because I haven't got around to it. But the main reason is I've seen a lot of YouTube channels have cruised Carnival, but they've cruised Carnival in Europe. And I feel like Carnival in Europe is kind of a different experience and different passages. I feel like Carnival's real heartland is sailing the Caribbean. That is what they do. That's what they created. That's what they do. And I have never quite synchronized a Carnival trip. It is on my absolute list to do, and I do really want to travel Carnival because obviously they are the biggest cruise line in terms of passenger numbers in the world. So it's more I haven't got it synchronized. I did have one booked. COVID came along, and I've never got it done. But I really want to do it in the Caribbean. So I want to link it to a Caribbean cruise because I feel if you're going to do Carnival, you need to do it where they are, masters at it. Because I feel watching a lot of those ones in Europe, it's more. It just feels like a different experience. Baka Boys are on Scenic Eclipse too. Great, have a fabulous time. It's very interesting. It's just interesting, this whole very mixed experience. Okay, so it's interesting because I looked at Scenic Eclipse quite often, and when I was looking at planning going back to Antarctica, I looked at it and I was not sure about the reviews and stuff, and I decided to go back on Silversea because I really think they have an incredible expedition team, which is what I really rate, and I wanted to try the new ship. But John, it's very interesting. There's a couple of these independent lines. It's going to be interesting to see where they kind of net out, whether they can actually manage without that kind of back office and supply chain stuff, and whether these small lines will really, over time, how they will fare. Let's have a look. Pacer 21. I would like to take my first cruise in February. Fabulous. I'm always very excited when I see first-time cruises. We'll need to book the cruise and flight from Canada, but travel agencies have gone online or shut down any cruise lines who book anything. Okay, so two things here, Pacer 21, is I have a travel agent that I can recommend in Canada who will be able to do all that for you. Strongly recommended by people in Canada who use them. Rosemary also suggests someone else who's a little bit more kind of expedition focused. This is more general focus. So I do have a recommendation. What I will do is I will put a link to an article where I list the travel agents that I recommend in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia. So they're a good starting point. But you're right, cruise lines, generally speaking, every cruise line will offer you the ability to book a flight and book pre-stay hotels and transfers. So they will always offer you that. The challenge, depending on where you're going, is sometimes cruise lines give you quite complicated routings to get there, though you can push back a bit. Like I've done that with cruise lines before, where they've come back and offered some bizarre routing, and I've just said, no, I want a direct flight to Santiago. Actually, I booked Santiago flight myself, but I want a direct flight to Santiago. I don't want to go via Madrid and blah, blah, blah. So you can push back often a little bit on the routings, but all the cruise lines will offer that, Pacer 21. But if you want a travel agent, particularly as a first-time cruiser, I'd encourage you to work with a travel agent. And so I will put that link in the article. Again, if you come back, and probably more than 10 minutes now with a lot of links I'm putting in, but if you come back, there's a link to that article. Or if you just go to my blog, tipsfortravelers.com, and search travel agents, it will come up as well. But you can do it through the cruise line as well. But I'd strongly encourage you, there you are. So let's have a look. Another question on the Mekong. How to get the most out of a Mekong River cruise as an Asian traveler who's comfortable with traveling alone along? Maybe that's alone in those countries. Are there particular sections hard to get by on that? Somewhat, Malchin. I mean, I think my impression certainly, one reason I like the Mekong River cruise is a lot of it was incredibly rural, and that you wouldn't be able to get to by land because these villages in the middle of absolutely nowhere, which is I really enjoyed. So we go to these tiny little villages. You see local life. We go to very small shrines and temples, which you would never do as on land base. Obviously, you go to, you're going to go to Hanoi, we went to Phnom Penh, obviously we went to Ho Chi Minh City. So those you can obviously do by land, but just experiencing those rural communities, which is where we spend most of our time, you can't really do. So that would be my thought. Chris asking, your choice for an Alaska cruise, I have 14 days max. So Chris, I would strongly encourage you to look at two things. One of which is to look at a trip that goes from either Seward or Whittier down to Vancouver, which normally are 10 days. And then I would add on to that, so in this case, if you're doing it that way around, rather Vancouver up, I would then add in a couple of days at one of the hotel lodges, one of the cruise line lodges in the Denali. So that will take you up to 14 days. So you'll find many cruise lines will sell you packages. So I would look at that. So you get a combination of seeing a bit of land, you're probably going to see more wildlife in that 10-day cruise. So the advantage of the 10-day cruise, rather than the Inside Passage, which will go sort of normally, most of them go to Seattle and back or Vancouver and back, is you spend much more time in Alaska. You're going to see much more places a little bit further north, for example. And that would be the one choice. Now, if you want to be even more adventurous and you're less fussed about seeing Skagway, Juneau, Ketchikan, those sort of iconic cities, consider the 14-day Hurtigruten expedition cruise. I did look at that, and it's very exciting. It's much more expedition, so much more remote parts around Alaska, much more stuff in Zodiac touring and stuff. But that's 2 weeks long, and it's very different. It's a very different experience. Arlene Coloma Smith, in January 2025, an Arctic cruise on America. Does the ship get close enough to glaciers to see calving? To be honest with you, I haven't been on a sail-by cruise. So obviously, if you go on America, there'll be no landings. There are rules around how close you can get to any of the glaciers. Now, I actually haven't seen a lot of calving, to be honest, in Antarctica. I saw much more calving in Alaska than I did in Antarctica. So a lot of it will depend on what time of year you're going on that. So January 25, kind of the peak of summer, I guess. So maybe there's a little bit more of that. I saw very limited calving. We did see some in Nico Bay and stuff. But if you go on the expedition ship, you get off on the Zodiacs and you'll be on land and stuff. So I don't know. To be honest, I do not know how close they get. But there are very strict rules about how close the ships can get. In reality, we didn't see massive amount of glaciers because it's more just ice stuff. There's a few glaciers in some of these places. So I don't, it's a long way of saying I don't know, but you're sitting at the time of the year where it's warmest. And I can't remember the rule. I know that the Zodiacs, I think it was 100 meters or 200 meters away from the sort of the fronts of glaciers, and the ship was even further back from that. So certainly, if they're allowed to get as close as you can get when we went to places like Hubbard, you can see it, but not as well as you can, obviously, if you're going on Zodiacs and things like that, because they do get closer. Let's have a look. Fine. So Marjorie, hopefully that answers the question. Is a good way to get to Southampton from the US. So the best way is Queen Mary 2, which goes into Southampton, is the best way. So there's some great more tips coming through Ravenna, which is great. Thanks for that. Tony, hopefully you heard my stuff on Japan, my tips on Japan. There's a lot of things that I'm putting. I will put a link to my Japan video there. I talk a lot in that video around how you can actually feel much more confident going self-touring, because Japan has changed a lot in the kind of the time between I went there. And also, I do talk a lot about the importance of planning excursions. A lot of people, when I was in Japan, were complaining that they were bored of seeing shrines. It's like, but you only book excursions are going to see shrines. So it's around how do you mix up a lot of that. So I'll put a link to my Japan video where I dive into those tips in much more detail. As I said, maybe 10 or 15 minutes after this, those links will be there. And of course, you can come back there. Jeff saying, I think your group cruises offset your solo cruises. So Jack, who is a channel member, been a long-term channel member, what are your thoughts on round the world cruises? So Jack, first of all, appreciate you being a member. Secondly, I love the idea of round the world cruises, although I'm slightly evolving off them. I went on half of the world cruise on Queen Victoria from Southampton to Sydney, absolutely loved it. Didn't want to get off, but we had other plans because we were seeing friends. Then we're actually going up, ironically, to join Queen Elizabeth out of Hong Kong around Japan, linked to other questions around Japan. But I love the idea of getting on the ship in one place and going all around the world. However, the downside with round the world cruises is there is a lot of sea days generally. So that, they'll do it maybe in 3 months, but if you do a true round the world, so point to point all the way around the world, by definition, there's a lot of sea days. So actually you don't call on that many ports. You might find you're only calling in 3 months on maybe 30 ports or so. So you don't get to see that many ports. Now we had a great time. Mark sort of, sold his business, and before he went back in-house, he sold his law firm before he went back in-house as a lawyer. He took a year out, and so actually unwinding was great. I'm much more inclined these days, because I want to do a circumnavigation, but it's to pick cruise lines and itineraries which effectively create a world cruise, so I can just dive into places much more. So for example, do a circumnavigation around South America, which then gets rid of South America, and do the line that does that right, but then maybe pick up another thing which goes, it does Hawaii up to Japan, up to Alaska. So actually create a combination and pick the right line and itinerary. So I see many more places. I feel like, so I have looked at others. There are some, for example, Oceania, which used to do on Sydney. I think they're moving to Vista. They do basically a half a year round world cruise, which then sees many more ports because they have much longer to get round. And that's the balance. I think that's the balance between the two. So I love the idea of doing it, but I would do a little bit more pick and mix, because I feel if you're going to go around the world, there's two things you can do. You can take off saying, I've been all the way around the world. And I was shocked actually on that world cruise. There's quite a few people that had been on the world cruise a couple of times. So obviously had lots of money and weren't getting off in even the few ports you're calling. They're like, I've been to Ho Chi Minh City before. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want every place to be, obviously some you might go back. I want to be every place to be incredibly exciting. So Kathy, on the point of celebrity, I hope that does. Ken, thank you. So you will beat me to Casablanca. So I definitely will be following your videos. So those who don't know, Ken Goes Cruising has a very active on socials and has a YouTube channel. So I'll definitely be watching those tips. But yes, let me know. Let's have a look. We're running out of time, but I'll quickly make sure that we do that. Rank. What part of the Caribbean is the best? Okay, this is quite a hard question to answer. I personally like the Southern Caribbean versus the Eastern and Western. I find the Eastern and Western parts of the Caribbean, they're much more, obviously by definition, much more tourist because they're close to Florida, especially, so you can do those in a 7-day itinerary. And they are normally lots of mega ships, really packed ports. Once you get down further south, you're getting into St. Martin. Obviously, it's these places are busy. Barbados, St. Lucia. Even if you go right down, to Curacao stuff. I really like that because I feel they're a little bit more, I mean, they're obviously very touristy still, but they are there's much more of the history and the culture to see, as well as great beaches stuff. So I like the southern part of the Caribbean, definitely. Laura O, Royal Caribbean Allure of the Seas Transatlantic on October the 26th, 2025. Wow, very soon. What time is your preference to schedule embarkation? Laura, I like to go early. So I like to kind of get there at 11 o'clock, whatever, just as they're open, rattling the doors, open the doors. Great thing with Royal Caribbean, I'm not sure where that one's selling out. I'm guessing Florida. I'm not sure. But generally, the Royal Caribbean are just phenomenal at embarking people and really fast. I like to get there really early, get on, get my emails out the way, often the cabins aren't ready because obviously they're not ready to lunchtime. So try not to take too much hand luggage. Get a chance to start to explore the ship. These ships are massive, get a sense of it, have something to eat, settle in, and it's done, rather than hanging around and worrying. So I like to get on really early. What I tend to do more these days is, often they'll say the first time is 12 or whatever. I'm increasingly getting there early because I'm finding you can often beat the queues by getting early, because they'll normally let you in when they're first open. So that's what I kind of tend to do. Beth making the point, just reinforcing the point, is the reason that they don't let you get too close is calving creates effectively a mini tsunami. So you definitely, that's why even the ships are further up, but definitely for the zodiac. Let's have a look. Marjorie, follow. I should give up question mark. I'm flying from the US to Southampton to embark on Queen Mode 2. Contact Mode 2 from the US. I'll be flying flight aboard Hero. Impossible. Marjorie, I mean, Heathrow's not that bad. I wouldn't be too worried about Heathrow. In reality, it's not that bad. If you're flying from the US, if you're flying on a US line, you're probably going to Terminal 3, which is actually pretty efficient. I flew back recently on American or something. I found that pretty efficient. I wouldn't fret about it. Heathrow's not that bad, so don't worry about it. We might have overplayed it. Just I find particularly with BA, I don't know with their baggage handler at Terminal 5, they can be really, really slow coming out. But I found Terminal 3, which I'm guessing you might be flying British Airways, but if you're flying any of the US lines, or even Delta, American stuff, they all go to Terminal 3, and I find that pretty efficient. Tracy, what is your preferred cruise line for an Iceland, Greenland cruise? Tracy, this a little bit depends on what you're looking for. So I would personally, if your budget and time allows, look at if you can get on an expedition cruise, because an expedition cruise is going to go to parts of Iceland and Greenland that you may not do on a regular cruise ship. So I actually did it on Hapag-Lloyd. It was amazing, but that was an expedition thing. You can do that on like Seabourn on the expedition ships. They will do that. Silversea does it as well, I think. But if you're looking to go on a more classic cruise line, so you don't want all the cost of expedition and you want to do more traditional kind of excursions, not zodiacs, there's a lot of cruise lines that do it. I've done Iceland on a couple of them. I've done it on Saga. I've done it on Voyage to Antiquity, which doesn't really exist anymore. And I went on Windstar, and actually I'm going there on Celebrity soon. No, 26, I'm going there. So I think there's a couple of lines that do really well. I would look at lines that base ships there. So you find a lot of the smaller ship lines like Viking, Oceania. I'm not sure if Azamara offhand does certainly, and I think Seabourn might do, but some of the smaller ship lines, they base the ship during the season there. And again, it's a little bit like they know it incredibly well. Now, Iceland cruises are expensive because both Iceland and Greenland are very expensive. So going on a smaller ship kind of multiplies it. If that, from a budget perspective, is too much, there is some quite interesting itineraries I was looking at recently on America and I think Celebrity. So, but I would try and go those smaller ships. So the advantage if you go on something like Viking or Oceania, they tend to have quite a good enrichment program. So you're also going to learn quite a lot about the places as well. So that is quite a big, that's definitely quite a big plus. Thanks so much for the questions. We have churned through the questions. We've kind of run out of time. Just a reminder, next week I will be in Santiago. I will be doing a live stream, all things going to plan, at 4 p.m. Santiago time, which I think is going to be 3 o'clock Eastern time. I think it's going to be noon Pacific time. I think it's going to be either 8 or 7 o'clock, depending on the time changes. So do keep a look at next Sunday just to double check the times. So I will, as soon as I get into Santiago, double check the times and adjust those. Maybe I'll do another quick reminder about that cruise, just remind you about the Cruise Globe if that interests you as well. It's really good fun, doesn't cost you anything. Give that a go, the Cruise Globe. So I will hopefully have safe travels, assuming my travels go well. I will see you next week. This week's video, by the way, is incredibly popular. That came out yesterday. It's all about staying on board. So if you want that, do that. And then I will go and put those links in and see you hopefully next week. Take care.